let's talk about the Houston Astros. I think that's a good place to start with the AL West. There's so much to talk about with this division. However, let's talk about the World Series champion. I think we didn't give them justice when we did our division preview. I think a lot of Astro fans let us know that as well on here. We were a little not as in depth as we should have, as you will. We were kind of touching the surface with all teams, but it seems like they wanted a little bit more, and that's fine. We'll give that to you. The question I want to ask you here, and it does seem like this could be the case with the amount of pitching they have, with their young stud infield, with Pena, obviously Altuve, Bregman. They're coming up on some contract years very shortly, but they're aging out, but still the case. Kyle Tucker's outstanding. There's just some really good players on this squad. Now you add GM Dana Brown to the mix, who has done some fantastic things in Atlanta. You got to hope that they're going to also try to do in Houston, sign their young guys like Tucker and Pena to good contracts. Maybe some of those really big pitchers, nice pitchers as well. My thought here, though, all that together, are the Houston Astros a perfect team? Like, is that even possible? Is Houston a perfect team, Sean?
I think if you're, man, I hate to say it, but if anybody is, it's the Houston Astros. And if you do yourself a favor, if you want to be blown away here, go to Fangraphs and their team depth charts and take a look at the Astros all the way around the field. Left field, Alvarez, McCormick in center, Tucker in right, Bregman, Pena, Altuve, Jose Abreu, and then, of course, Martin Maldonado. And then their DH, Michael Brantley. Like, come on.
Right.
Like, there's just no end. And so when you hear, I forget who it was saying it, because it was one of those things just before we went on, but somebody was saying, like, the Yankees feel like, oh, Houston can't beat us if we get on a roll. And I'm like, that must be some kind of roll, extra butter and everything, because there's no way that is true. The Houston Astros are the team to beat in the American League. And I'm saying that as a Blue Jays fan who is looking forward to some real serious noise from my own team. The Astros are the class of the American League, maybe even the entire major leagues. And it kind of like rubs me the wrong way to say that, given, the history that the recent history that they've had and all of that stuff. And they've paid their dues for those, so like, I'm not trying to dig up old memories here, but considering how much they've gone through over the last, and the penalties that they've taken a hit, Keith Law had hit their system that ranked as 26th in all of baseball. And I mean, so, they have their issues, sure. But I mean, here we are, February, whatever date it is, the beginning of February. Right now, they are the class of baseball.
I mean, if you're going to ALCS or World Series year after year after year, I mean, it's consecutive for the last, I want to say it's 5 or 6 years. I don't have it in front of me. I can't remember. But we have seen the Astros in the ALCS at a minimum. If you're doing that year after year, as much as I love prospects and love watching them come up, farm system obviously doesn't matter. Being 27th doesn't seem like to be a big deal. Now, that will improve with Dana Brown. I will say that 100%. There's no doubt in my mind that will improve. What we've seen in his track record, he will make that more of a priority. It might not be right away, because the time he was hired, he's only been able to hire one person so far in his regime. He's going to probably have to wait till next October for that to happen. But we're going to see some big changes with Houston. But I don't think that's going to take them and make them any less competitive. I will be interested to see what happens at the end of 2024 when Bregman and Altuve are free agents. And when are they going to take the route of young core and do the full Atlanta run and kind of do what the Braves have done and let Bregman and Altuve kind of walk, at least one of them? Very interesting, especially when you think of the star-studded Hall of Fame caliber second basemen that the Houston Astros have had for years. Do you do that to Jose Altuve, or do you let him stay a Houston Astro for life? Does the new GM feel like that is a thing that needs to happen, a priority, or is that over his head? Is that not one of his calls? That could be something that goes straight to the owner. I could see that. All of these conversations, I feel we're building that groundwork, but you got to think that that's going to be something that's going to come up very soon.
Yeah. No, exactly right. Like you think at some point what goes up must come down, right? There's got to be an end to it, and right now it might be a couple of years, as you said when those guys hit free agency, but that's something that Houston has been able to weather thus far with George Springer leaving and Carlos Correa leaving, and and they have not missed a beat. But you have to have the pieces to be able to replace those, right? And that's kind of where it'll be interesting to see how over the next couple of years whether Houston can get and develop those replacements. Because if not, there's only one other way to do it, and you got to spend, right? And so it'd be very fascinating for me to watch, just because I love that part of the game, like the roster manipulation and all that
Mhm.
stuff. I'll play MLB The Show and I'll simulate all the games just to get back to the off season again, right? So it'll be
100%.
fascinating to me to see how they make that next transition when Bregman and Altuve and others like them are set to depart, maybe.
George Springer leaves in free agency a few years ago. The biggest question was who's going to play center field, who's going to lead off. Kyle Tucker took that and ran. You can make the argument that Kyle Tucker is doing a better job than George Springer is for the Houston Astros. Carlos Correa leaves last season. Everybody was like, oh man, we have this young guy. Is he going to be enough? His name's Jeremy Pena. I never heard of him. What's he do? He comes out to just be an absolute stud, especially in the
Yeah.
postseason. Now we're going to see a full season of him and possibly see him locked up for a long time. I'm sure through arbitration and through a few of his years in free agency if it goes the Dana Brown way. You have to put this in your mind that if they just did that with George Springer and Carlos Correa, they're on a pretty good positive track record. You have to think that for at least one of them, they're ready to make that decision on either Jose Altuve at second or Alex Bregman at third base.
Yeah, Altuve is a lifetime Astro. That's not going to change. I don't know what I would do. I can't imagine a scenario where they just let him walk, or even worse, like trade him.
Yeah.
Because then you've got his replacement at some point. One of the faces will always remind you that you just got rid of Jose Altuve, right? So I would be shocked if he's not a lifetime Astro. Alex Bregman's a different story. I mean, he doesn't quite mean as much to the Astros as an Altuve does, but I mean, he's also very difficult to replace.
Right.
But if I had to pick here and now, Altuve, lifetime Astro.